Welcome, everyone, to the September 7th, 2023 regular meeting of the Encinitas Planning Commission. I'm calling this to order at 6 o'clock. And let me grab a pen here. In lieu of a roll call, I'm going to note that Commissioner Ryan is absent today, and we will be deliberating these cases with the 4 remaining commissioners. We like to begin each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We begin each meeting with oral communications, where anyone wishing to speak on a topic not on tonight's agenda may request to do so by filling out one of the white speaker slips. Comments or questions during oral communications cannot be addressed by the Planning Commission or staff, but may be referred to staff if needed. Dina, do we have any?
We have none this evening.
We have none. Okay. Well, moving right on. Are there any changes to the agenda, Anna? No changes. Well, we move on to our consent calendar. These items are considered non-controversial or routine in nature. All consent calendar items are typically voted on collectively in a single motion without any staff presentation, public comment, or deliberation. However, if a member of the public or one of the commissioners requests a consent calendar item to be heard, this will be removed and given an individual hearing. Items removed from the consent calendar to be heard immediately after the consent calendar vote. Tonight we have 2 items on our consent calendar. Item 6A is the Heritage Grove nomination for 14 Melba Road trees. This is a request for a Heritage Grove nomination for 14 trees located at 1000 Oceanic Drive, 1202, 1220, and 1250 Melba Road, and 1005 Woton Drive. Item 6B is the South Coast Highway 101 sidewalk improvements. This is a public hearing to consider a major use permit and design review permit for the construction of a new ADU walking path on the west side of South Highway 101, connecting the Cardiff Living Shoreline Project to the city of Solana Beach. Dina, has anyone requested these items be pulled?
We have both items being pulled.
Both items being pulled. Well, let's move on directly to the item 6A, the Heritage Grove nomination. And I believe Takuma? Thank you. Well, welcome. It's nice to see a new face here. Let's see, I better. Yes, Dina, who did, was this a member of the public? Well, no, it doesn't really matter. Does it? Yeah. I was going to pull it regardless, so I had questions. So we'll start with a staff report by Takuma. And forgive me, I got to keep moving my glasses. Eastland. Did I say that properly?
Takuma Eastland, yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. The item before you is the Heritage Grove nomination of 14 trees. The trees are, The trees are located along Melba Road between Blue Jack Road and Crest Drive. 10 of them are city-maintained trees within the public right-of-way. 3 of them are city-maintained trees on private property, and 1 is a privately maintained tree on private property. To be designated as a heritage tree, it must be considered a tree of community significance that meets at least one of the following findings. It's one of the oldest and largest of its species. It's a unique form or species. It has historic significance, or it's a defining landmark or significant outstanding feature of a neighborhood. Trees on private property can be designated, but they require consent from the property owner. In January 2023, City Council amended the municipal tree ordinance to include the definition of heritage grove, which means a group of trees that collectively meet one or more of the heritage tree criteria. Of the 14 trees in the application, 6 were not considered. 4 weren't considered because they're located on private property and property owner consent was never received. 1 wasn't considered because it had already been designated as a heritage tree in 2022, and another wasn't considered because it fell during the storm in February of this year. Of the 14 trees in the application, 3 trees located in front of 1000 Oceanic Drive and 1005 Wotan Drive were not recommended due to their overall size and condition. Of the 14 trees in the application, the remaining 5 Torrey pines were recommended for approval. They're located within the public right-of-way in front of 1000 Oceanic Drive and 1202 and 1250 Melba Road. These trees were found to be a defining feature of the neighborhood. As can be seen in the image, the trees recommended for approval are those that have a star next to their label. With that in mind, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the nomination of 5 Torrey pines as a heritage grove based on the findings contained in the draft resolution of approval. And this concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the Planning Commission? Questions of clarification to staff? None? The trees that were not recommended, do we have pictures? Like to,
We do, yes. So one of them is here, 12141E tree.
mm-hmm.
These are all on private property. The 2 on the left were not considered. Yeah, those are the remaining 2.
Sorry, the ones on the left were what? They were not considered?
Were not recommended.
And the one on the right is the tree that came down in the storm?
Correct.
Cool, thank you. That's all I've got for clarification questions right now. Hearing no others, we'll move directly to public comment. Steve?
I have a question. It seemed like in the staff report, there was a question from the property owner to the north of Melba Road regarding tree 12145 and 12143. They made some sort of claim that they had already applied an SB 330 application to remove those trees, and that their application was governed by the law, what was in place at the time. Was that resolved with that applicant? And is that an active question about whether they can or cannot be put on the heritage tree?
My understanding is that for a separate project outside of the scope of this nomination, public improvements were proposed that are no longer applicable as it relates to the development on 1220 Melba Road.
Okay. And it seemed like that development also maybe had a dedication to Melba Road required as part of their application. And can you confirm that today those 2 trees sit on public property as it is prior to any dedication? Or is it public only after a dedication?
Within the scope of this project, I'm not aware of any dedications. It's likely that there is, but it relates to a different project. Currently, 12145 tree and 12143 tree have been deemed to be city-maintained trees in the public right-of-way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for staff. I read the whole report, 218 pages was a lot, and it was confusing because some trees were proposed, some are included, some are already approved. So I have a question about number 9, Coast Live Oak. It's tree number 0064152023. I see you recommending deny, but I did read a public comment that came in that this tree is thriving now because of the rain. And so I'm wondering if you're still considering that it would be a deny. That's one question. And my other question is regarding the previously approved Monterey cypress. Even though it was previously approved as a heritage tree, this proposal is to include it as a heritage grove as part of the group. So I'm not baffled as to why you would not just continue to include it.
For your first question, trees 6 through 9 are all located on private property. And so regardless of how well the trees are doing, without property owner consent, they cannot be designated as heritage trees.
I thought I read in the report that the property owner for number 9 did give approval.
In relation to that development, my understanding is that for all trees on his property, consent was not provided.
In your report? In the report, I'd have to find that.
I've got it here, Susan. Page 4, it says 6 through 8. Oh, and no, it says and tree 9 were not considered. I thought it was just 6 through 8. Page 4 of the staff report.
Yes, but further down in the report, I believe there was paperwork from the private owner only for this one private tree that the owner had approved.
Give me a moment to scan it as well.
The PC 7, this,
It's on the resolution. It's in the resolution to approve.
Oh, is it in the resolution?
I just did a Control F and searched and ended up on page 9 of 218, and that tree number was listed.
Yeah, the resolution calls for it to be denied, but I haven't found, let's see, to Monterey Pines. Well, I'd say let's hear public comment, and we can come back and ask staff, could be that someone in the audience knows what's going on here.
And what about the other tree? The cypress?
So once a tree is designated as a heritage tree, there's no functional difference between it being included as in a grove or as a tree by itself. They are all considered now heritage trees.
Thanks.
Yeah, I actually have another question of clarification, because the introduction of the new concept of the heritage grove was kind of a groundbreaking thing for us. I mean, it allows trees that are not the heritage trees to kind of snuggle up and be part of the grove. By that logic, the existing singly designated heritage tree would seem to be like an anchor of this heritage grove. I mean, there's no reason it can't be a heritage tree under one ruling and part of a heritage grove is another. Because we're treating this right now as if like each one will now be designated a heritage tree, which they will be, but the heritage grove concept was something long, hard fought for. And I see this as a grove, and I wonder about some of the smaller trees, whether they're not like friends, but I'm getting into deliberation, my own. Was there a reason? I'm confused, because it feels like we almost need a new designation for Heritage Grove. We got H tree, but we're not treating them as a unit and by this model. We're just using our existing code to simulate that. So we'll discuss that after, I think. I would love to move on to public comment unless we have more clarifying questions. No? So I'm going to open public comment, and I assume we have speakers on this, right?
So we have one speaker, that's Geraldine Kessler.
Well, Geraldine Kessler is the applicant, correct? So I think give her more than 3 minutes. I go 10 minutes on this, as much time as required.
Yeah, hi. I know it is really confusing. So can I just tell you real quick? The Monterey cypress, Courtney thought that was her tree, so she applied simultaneously as I applied for the grove. And that was I think over a year ago. So that happened almost simultaneously. And then hands down, they were able to approve that one because they could prove that Anton was responsible for that tree.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Here, pull your mic down just a little bit.
oh, okay, I'm sorry. How about now?
It's okay. No, it's perfect.
Okay, so that was that. That's quite confusing, I know. So when I initially applied and I got the whole paperwork together, I thought these trees were super old because, again, my background is medical. And so I looked at this 1934 image, this aerial image, and they all looked like the same trees that were there. So my original application said, hey, he planted all these trees. And then I also thought that those 4 trees were in the city's right-of-way, because when I filled out the application with help from Jay, we both kind of thought that they were in the city right-of-way. So I still think they are, and I can't, they've dumbed it down for me so many times with the boundaries, but it still appears like they're in the city right-of-way. So that's kind of where that is. And just recently, that oak came back to life that was on the private property, and the UFAC didn't think it was going to be healthy, so they said they nixed that one on their approval of the trees. So I think that kind of answers some of the questions a little bit. So that's why there's 2 applications in there, and it's super confusing because all my stuff said that Anton planted all those beautiful trees, but I'm sorry. Like I said, I thought he did. I was wishful thinking, but he didn't. So then I had to go back and use some of the, some of the imagery that the UFAC got from their stuff. So anyway, so just, does that help at all?
No, I think most of us
bit.
were here for that one, weren't we? Yeah.
A little bit, so.
We remember the first Monterey that
Yeah,
was received
yeah.
Heritage Track. We were all there.
The first one, that was good. So, so then I just wanted to put this up here too, because those trees that they say they're on the private property, I can't find any deeds that like move that into his property or the property of the development. But anyway, I just want to this is my little spiel. I'd like to thank the UFAC, the Planning Commission, and the city staff for all the time and effort they put into it. It's been a journey. Please take a closer look at all the trees and take guidance from the UFAC, but also look at each tree individually and look and see the location of the trees that appear to be in that city right-of-way. Like I said, I don't see any deeds that state the owner on the Melba acquired that extra 5 feet that extended into the road. It's very confusing and daunting to me. But anyway, I was able to secure trees for the neighborhood that will be, for the neighbors that will be impacted by this Melba project with the SDG&E and the Davy Tree Replacement Program. And it would be nice if we could add an oak tree to the location that large Tory that fell down during the storm. And I asked Davy about this, and they said they could replace it, but it would have to be okayed by the city due to the location. So anyway, this is what I had to say about that, and I think that's it. I think I'm done. 3 minutes. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kessler. Was that it?
Yes, that was it.
All
For
right.
item 8, for item 6A.
Okay, that was our speakers for that item. I'm going to leave public comment open in case we need to ask you some further questions.
I still have a question for staff.
Let's continue.
I'm curious about the Melba Road center line and distance to the right-of-way that is included, because I'm seeing these trees in the photo. They all seem to be in the same location, just if some are in the private area, is the right-of-way have a jog at that location, or is the right-of-way measured from the center the same distance on the entire road?
Staff can't speak on whether or not dedications at certain parts of Melba Road were at some point provided to the city. I am aware that as it relates to the development at 1220 Melba Road, a record of survey was performed. And I believe during that subdivision, at which point it was determined and recorded with the county. The map was recorded with the county, and those trees were determined to be on private property.
Well, as an architect, I've had a project where a street right-of-way changed on the road that the project was on. And it was really a shock to me at the time. And I had to redraw plans overnight, literally stayed up all night redrawing those plans. But normally, a street right-of-way is determined as distance from center line of the road, the public road, and it is a certain distance, such as 30 feet or 40 feet or whatever it is, to the edge of the right-of-way. And the boundary for the property line then begins at that location. So I don't understand why this particular situation shows 3 trees that are clearly in line with public trees as if they are private. And so I'm concerned about it. If you do not have accurate documentation, then how do you know?
So if I may, a good indication of city-owned trees is we have a tree tracker that identifies which ones are within our right-of-way. I will also note that The trees that are on private property will also be a subject of discussion when that project comes forward with their proposal to the Planning Commission.
So I might understand then that the 3 trees in question cannot probably be approved tonight, but when that development comes up, a greater understanding of the exact property lines and street lines will come up at that time.
That's correct.
So at that time, the applicant can possibly reconsider with new information whether the trees qualify as heritage. So right now, we're not quite sure, or we're just going to wait for the application to come in from the applicant, the development applicant that's forthcoming.
Sure, the application is currently in-house and being reviewed, but I don't want to speak too much about it because it's going to be before the Planning Commission. But at that time, it would be disclosed the data about the survey that had been conducted, where the right-of-way line is, the dedication that's going to be required. But the information that we do have now, we route this project to all the divisions to confirm what trees. We send it to Public Works. Are these our trees or not our trees? And so it was determined that they were in fact on private property. But yes, to answer your question, they would be considered when that development comes before Planning Commission.
Thank you.
I want to say not specifically that they are heritage trees, but that they are trees whether or not to be removed or replaced and those kinds of topics.
Understood.
So do I understand it's still unclear whether they are or aren't? I mean, is it like they're definitely 100% on private property, or is that to TBD?
All data we have says that they are on private property.
Okay. I'm curious. I was trying to pull up the GIS map of this lot. I know, like Santa Fe, a lot of lots, we've had at least one housing development where their property went to the center line of the road. And I'm wondering if this is a similar case, this being an older neighborhood in Encinitas.
I'm looking at the map, the survey right now, on 136 of 218. There's a 10-foot difference between the right-of-way, the offset from the center line of the street of the adjacent lot to our lot. So this lot here is clearly closer to the center line of the street than the one to the due west of it, or even to the east of it. In my experience, those,
What page number?
136 of 218. I encounter projects all the time where the property line is not a continuous line along the street center line, because over time, different properties have had to dedicate land, and if this is the last property to develop along that street, they have not been asked to dedicate land yet. But if a property east or west of it has been developed, or for any number of triggers, the city or the county at the time would have asked for could have asked for a dedication. So it's not uncommon to see the property lines fluctuate in and out.
I'm wondering if it couldn't be possible for us to condition this approval that if it turns out that these trees can be considered city trees, that they then inherit this Heritage Grove nomination, or this status that we're bequeathing on them.
I see no indication that they're on public property at all. They seem to be clearly on private property, and no one has been able to demonstrate to the counter, other than to call into question it, but they can't show any evidence that they are on public property. So I would say I would go with what the legal survey shows and make a decision based on that.
Well, yeah, you've got the right of it. We're not really allowed to make up our own facts.
Right.
We deal with
But
the
the
facts as
date of the
presented.
survey would be very questionable in my mind. When was the survey created?
I mean, this looks like it's been submitted as part of whatever application is being processed at the city, so I'm assuming it's within the last 2 years.
That's correct.
Which
I
says
see
in
the date
corner-
on the survey is 12/31/22.
Yep, that's what I'm seeing.
Fairly recent survey,
Within the
and
year.
they paid for that survey. Generally, you get what you pay for.
If I may.
So
Yeah, I'm not
I'd be
sure I agree
careful
with
I'd
there.
like to
that.
see original surveys, and I'd like to understand how this one particular property comes forward so much further on Melba when the others do not. To my way of thinking, it is unusual. It is not that typical to see such variation. So I'm finding it something that maybe we want to consider phrasing that if it turns out it's on public property, that they're included, and if it turns out they're not, they're excluded, that kind of thing. I don't know.
Would that preclude the ones that are approved to be approved tonight if we have a condition? I'd hate to condition the approval of the ones that staff has recommended.
If I could,
Please, sorry. Thank you.
if I could point out to Susan, on sheet 191 of 218, it also shows the property lines, and it shows that property southward or closer to the center line of the street than the property to the west of it. A survey is a licensed survey by the state of California. They are not in the business of making up facts to suit whoever hires them.
If I may too, we do have a survey consultant that reviews surveys that come in to cross-reference and ensure that they are accurate.
Yeah, I paid for a survey for my home when I purchased it originally, and it cost me a lot of money, and they were very, very thorough. They went all the way way outside my neighborhood to zero in. Apparently, I was the first one to spend that money. And they're certified, licensed people. They're not going to play games. Their license is on the hook if they do. I mean, given this, I think I probably do agree the trees probably are not on public property. It could be that because the lot extends out, is it possible, see, just I want to get your name again, sorry about that. Takuma, is that right, or Takuma? Takuma, thank you. Can you pull up on your screen our GIS system? I'd like to look at the lots here. Maybe someone else could come in and, oh yeah, Todd knows his way around.
And 191 also is based on the county's records. I mean, this is the GIS system here, right? This is not the
And this-
surveyor drawing anything.
This is kind of what I was looking,
And we're looking at
this is
These
kind of what I was
lines-
looking for.
But these lines aren't consistent with the survey in that the survey shows that the lot jogs back in to the, I'm not sure if that's
the
east or
east?
west.
Yeah.
If you look at the survey bumps out, call it 90 degrees on the left, and then bumps back in 90 degrees on the right. What the GIS map shows is almost a narrowing of the city property all the way to the right. And I don't think that's reflected on.
Well, then it does bump back in at the eastern
Yeah,
property.
all the way to the end, but the
After
survey
three.
that was submitted showed it on the parcel itself. Is that correct?
The point being, this is coming off the county's
Yeah,
GIS
yeah, I'm
system,
just-
and that there are lot lines that,
Agreed. I'm just saying there's an inconsistency between the GIS map that we have here that just shows a single parcel what the surveyor did. I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong. I'm just pointing out the inconsistency between
Right.
the
Yeah.
GIS map and the survey.
these are often not in registration truly,
Agreed.
right? They're only good for a certain value.
Oh, I hear you. No, I would go with the survey as the person who read the title policy and created his survey.
The reason I
and
like
stamped
to
it.
look this up on our own GIS is quite often that's when you see lots that go out to the middle of the road, especially when you deal with this transition between older neighborhoods that are becoming new on certain pieces.
I think you guys all have experience on that on a recent application, so, yeah.
Oh, look, we've got something on the screen. Can we zoom in on that? Can we zoom in on that? There you go. Yeah, I can see how easily you could imagine they're ours, but their lot goes out, and I kind of believe it. I do think it's a little awkward, but I think we could condition this so that if it turns out on that development time, but they could be absorbed in, but honestly, I don't think that's going to fly.
I'm really concerned, there's all this discussion about this project that's never come in front of us. We've heard about it for
yeah.
years, and yet have never seen drawings. And I feel like we are starting to debate the merit, or some parts of that project, and really in front of us tonight is the idea of these heritage trees. And I think we're kind of piecemealing it a little bit, and clearly someone is trying to lock down these trees before that project can come before us. In my mind, the five.
Are we on deliberation?
We are in deliberation, yes.
Okay.
In my mind, the five that were identified by staff clearly constitute a grove by their association with each other. They seem to be individually of a size and stature of a tree that seems like they're heritage trees to me. I think everything else, I agree with the staff report that the ones that are on private property are not under consideration. One fell down, one isn't deemed big enough to be of merit. So I would be against adding the oak tree back in. I'm in favor of the staff report as it's written.
Well, I still have a hesitation. I agree about the private property trees. I think our hands are tied there. We're not allowed to do things on other people's property. I remember all the deliberations on the creation of this Heritage Grove concept, and part of it, and I remember, I think it was Ari from the Botanic Gardens was, a grove is not just the big trees. Those are just big trees. A grove is the big trees and the smaller trees that perhaps grew from cones that fell down near it. And so the smaller subsidiary trees, I'm thinking if we are truly going to treat this as a grove, they count also, unless they're sickly or dying. I mean, they are under the shelter of these other 5 trees that clearly meet the specifications. So I want to set a precedent here that a grove is a grove. It's not just the big trees. It's like saying a forest is only the trees that are taller than 120 feet, and then anything else you can cut down. It's that's why I wanted to look more specifically at those smaller trees. Are some of them just ridiculous that shouldn't be there, or are they related? Certainly I'm looking at, it's going to take me a second to get back to this. One second. We have those 3 trees on the south end where, the 2 in the middle, or the 2 on either end were on the approved list and the other 2 were not. Can you pull up maybe, forget about the GIS for now. If you could pull up your presentation where you had the stars next to the trees that made it. I don't think I have that in my staff report.
If I may, Chair, I'd also like to ask Takuma to pull up the definition of what Heritage Grove is
Oh.
in your consideration.
Thank you very much. Yeah, if you can do that, I believe I had that here, but. I don't think I printed that page out.
Below section 1 is the definition of heritage tree as well as the new edition of Heritage Grove.
All right, well, usually I just back the UFAC on these, but are any of these other trees a significant part of that heritage grove? Because we're not really designating a grove here. We're just designating a bunch of trees, which, is a totally laudable goal, but I really want to make it clear that this is a grove. Look around, there's other groves in our town that need protection.
I'd be careful how you're describing grove. I mean, you're describing it on one hand as if it's a natural environment with multiple trees and saplings growing in this. This is along a street, right? So
Yeah,
these are
it's-
street trees, and I'm not arguing that they don't create some sort of canopy and linearity to it, but they are not a grove in the sense that they're very linear in one way, right? That they're not a parkland in that way.
Is the application for the individual trees, is the application for individual trees, or is there a component to the application that suggests a grove? I just want to know what I'm deliberating. Or does it really even matter?
With the new addition of Heritage Grove in our municipal code,
Right.
it allowed the city to review the 14 applications collectively.
Okay.
Bob, as I understand it, no single tree in this application would particularly qualify as a heritage tree.
I see.
But if you take them all collectively,
It's a grove.
you can call them a grove, and then they would comply.
Okay.
But a heritage tree is supposed to be like unique, historic,
Right.
of a certain size. Some of these Torrey pines are of a certain size, and they
Sure.
probably would be considered
À la carte,
a
a
la carte,
heritage
a
tree.
heritage tree.
Right.
But some like, frankly, the oak tree is on private property. I don't think it's in consideration, but given, it happens to be on my screen. Given that size, I'd say, well, it doesn't meet the size definition, it doesn't meet the historic definition, it doesn't meet, it's not a unique tree,
Right.
like there's other oak trees in the area.
Actually, I think our forestry commission has a definition, correct? Anna?
Of Heritage Grove? Is that what you're asking?
think it's right here.
Yeah, it's on the screen right now, is the definition that the UFAC have come up with.
And that was approved by city council?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, so a group, I'm assuming it's more than one, right? Trying to simplify things, and this application took more than one tree, put them all together, and the applicant is applying for a Heritage Grove designation. Some have been kicked out because they don't qualify. Some are on private properties, they don't qualify. Some, according to the staff who coordinated the conversation with our arborist, like that little sapling, doesn't qualify. So we're dealing with still a grove of qualified trees that are on public property.
Yeah. And I would remind you that it's been in front of a committee before
Urban
us.
Forest, yes.
That also, reviewed this and came to their recommendation.
Agreed.
After probably much more intensive review than.
Than ours,
than ours.
than my knowledge of a Torrey pine. Okay, I just want to make sure we're getting down to the grove application, not a tree application, and that the condition, I tend to agree with you, Commissioner Dalton, that we can't, I'd rather not condition those three other trees because we don't know. We do know that at the moment, as of right now, so with the facts that we have in front of us, is that no one says that those are on public property, they're on private property.
Correct.
So nothing's really changed in the application or the applicant's request, right? So we still are back to the basics.
Correct, in my mind.
Mine too.
There's a good example, I think, if we look to page 52 of our staff report. Sorry, making you work for your money over there.
Is this correct?
No, it's a picture of trees, page 52 of 218.
Yes.
Okay, so here we have 121141, 1240, and 12139. Now, the one in the middle is 12140, and that's recommended for Heritage Tree nomination. Now, the two on either side are both Tories, if I'm not mistaken, and
I think the middle one is not considered for heritage tree, and the ones,
I thought it was,
are we talking about these right here? These three?
I don't know, I'm looking at this picture right here of the trees. So that would be
Said 52.
39, 40, and 41. And I'm looking at the resolution, which shows, the resolution's a pain in the butt because it refers back to the application, not to the tree number.
Two of the trees on this map are both labeled 40. I presume one of them is 41 and one is number 40. When looking at those three trees, I assumed that was the left tree that was the one that was being excluded.
So it's case numbers 6073, 74, 75. Okay, let's see.
What page is that?
And I believe, looking at the resolution, the middle one is on the approved list. The other two, what's that? That's 73 and 75. I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but I feel this is yeah, so 75 is marked for denial. So 73 and 74 are both marked as approved for heritage trees. And that's 39 and 40. That's the one on the right, the one in the middle. The other one is that a Torrey? It looks more like a star pine.
It's a Norfolk.
It's a Norfolk, oh, okay.
Pine.
It's not a great picture. Let's see. What I'm after, my whole point here is that I don't want to, I have 3 copies of this. I don't want to take away one of those trees from the list if it's, you know, a child, or not directly child, but, you know, protected by the others. Because I still feel a grove can consist of,
I don't think
You know,
I don't think it's
tree
growing
and a-
from a pine cone from the bigger one.
oh yeah. Weirdly enough, I have like 6 pictures of that same clump. The report was very difficult to decipher which, I kept bouncing back between H tree, the heritage tree nomination numbers, and the tree numbers themselves, which is how most things are listed in the report.
Can you do the tree tracker? Can you put the tree tracker up there?
I'll tell you what, come on up, Ms. Kessler. I never close public comment, so let's hear.
I just was wondering if you could, 'cause some of those pictures I took just like walking down the street this
Yeah.
way and then that way, and I think that one was a little confusing that you were referring to. But maybe if we can put the tree tracker up, do you have that tree tracker? You know that?
I know the app. I don't have it in front of me now.
Oh, can he put it up? That's what I'm asking.
I'm just trying to make sure that, you know, I like the big trees. I think the big trees grow faster, sequester more carbon, but, you know, don't like to lose any trees. And if a smaller tree helps define this linear grove as a grove, then I'm just wondering if we're only looking at the ones that would have come in just as heritage trees.
I forgot why the UFAC didn't want that one. I'm not sure. But that one looks good to me when you walk down the street, you can see that one nicely. But
Keep
they-
pulling the mic towards you. I know.
Yeah, I can't remember why they nixed that one on the UFAC.
Well, I mean, right now I don't really have any strong basis for overruling them. You know, and don't worry about it. We'll keep digging. I haven't. I'm looking at some of the smaller trees. I haven't really found anything that's on the not approved list. God, this is a. So let's see again, which ones? 1, 2, 4, 5, and 11 were recommended. or not recommended?
I'm sorry, Commissioner. If you go to page 6 of 218,
Right.
there's the inventory number, which does correspond, and then to the right.
I know, it's just, it's back and forth.
I know, I'm just saying that was where the approve for 1, approve for 2, deny 3, approve 4, approve 5, deny 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 has already been approved. And then they approve 11. 12 is down, deny 13, 14.
I mean, what I'd like to see is the trees that are not recommended and see in what close proximity or far
no.
proximity they are from the others.
So as I understand your point, there's 3 trees that are not being recommended for approval. They are number 3, which we just looked at, was the
Yep,
North Fork
and I-
Island pine. Okay, it was the smaller of those 3 trees, and it was not of the same, it wasn't a Torrey pine.
Yeah, it didn't really make a grove-looking thing.
And then the other 2 trees are tree 13 and 14, which are down here on the south side of Melba at the eastern end of the map. And what I don't know is what that picture looks like, other than on page 56 of 218. This says this is tree 1215-8E, which doesn't correspond to those 2. I'm sorry. That's not the right page then.
Yeah, because this is
53 and 54.
I'll start bringing my laptop again. Thank you, everyone, for your patience while we dig through this.
53, 54.
There's 1257, where is 1253?
I know. A quick question, maybe I'm getting confused also, but we just looked at numbers 1, 2, and 3, one of which, number 3, was the Norfolk pine. On page 3 of 218, the beginning, that shows it's Oceanic Drive. Is that correct? Or are those on Melba?
I think,
We just looked, I'm looking at the aerial photo that he has up on the screen right now, right? And he's got the dot on the Norfolk pine. Is that a Melba address or an Oceanic
Yeah,
address?
I would have called that.
I would have called that-
Oh, Melba, sorry.
Melba,
Yeah.
Right, so, but on page 13, again, 1, 2, and 3, one of, number 3 was the Norfolk pine, and that says that is on Oceanic Drive. So to your point about confusion, where are the trees? Just want to make sure the address is that we're talking about, because, so, staff, can you help me on page 3 of 218 of the staff report? Buildings, trees 1, 2, and 3. Can you bring up that aerial and point out 1, 2, and 3 that they're on Oceanic Drive? Because I thought when you just brought it up, they were on Melba.
Like the corner of Melba and Oceanic, so it's
Oh, thank you.
kind of like that.
Okay. Seems to be, the addresses seem to be swapped later.
Correct, the address directly behind those trees are considered to be not on Melba, on Oceanic.
Okay.
and if I look at page 101 in our staff report, I think that's 12-153 and 12-154. And I can kind of see their point if that's
Hey, what number?
101.
101. Okay, so one of those is the tree on the right, which looks like a toothpick.
Yeah, you know, neither one of them are beautiful trees. They're Torreys, right?
They're not Tory, but they're Monterey
Monterey's,
pines.
sorry. Well, Monterey's are famous for being weird looking. I love them. I designed the Leucadia stamp based on the Monterey that used to live up at the end of Leucadia Boulevard, if you looked all the way to the top of the hill, towards the ocean.
That tree on the right does not appear to me to
No.
be anything that you would write and say, this is our heritage
No.
for this community, right?
Yeah, that's,
And if you took that tree away, would the single tree left to the left of it constitute a grove or a grouping of trees?
or
And I don't
it's
think it
it's
does.
separate, yeah. I'm afraid I'm kind of coming to the same conclusion that you came to, Steve. I'm sorry I had to take such a roundabout route here. I've kind of come into your camp. I think Susan and Bob, where are you feeling on this?
I agree with Commissioner Dalton, and I think I have to support staff and their findings on top of the UFAC who brought this first. And I think I'd like to applaud everybody for taking the time to go through it and read the report. Staff for making the presentation, counting the trees, and the applicant. Everything's been pretty thoroughly reviewed, and I haven't seen anything on here other than the conversation over the who owns the private or public property, but we'll deal with that at a different point in time. I think that I would support the resolution as written.
Susan, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I think the reason it's so confusing is there seem to be two different ways of numbering these trees. And so, for example, we have 12140E, but then city numbers are like 006075 or something.
I think those are
And
the
I-
heritage tree
I think that
nomination numbers.
in future, for our edification and ease of reading, if you can be consistent in how you present your numbering system, or if you're going to have a dual numbering system, if you can present them together with the photos, it would really help us to do our job more efficiently. I think I can support this application, and I think we should add notes that this is for Heritage Grove, that if additional information is provided that allows additional trees to be part of this grove, that we would support it. And if not, well, then that's the way that goes. So, but we have to have, I would like to support it, but I would like to also leave room so that if other trees, such as the oak, if the owner provides consent, or if that other property turns out that the property line is further back, I'd like to leave ourselves a way to include
Well-
additional trees. And I also have a question. When we're talking about a grove, normally a grove would be an area. And these specific trees wouldn't necessarily be designated individually so much so as a grouping of an area. So, when you're talking about urban forest, I'm still thinking of it as very confusing. It should be an area, and I think that our code needs some cleanup.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's part of the problem of the confusion, that if you're going to use the word grove, it's not really appropriate. Maybe what they really wanted to do is create a group of trees, and then they wanted to specify individual trees. But when I think of a grove, I don't think of individual trees. I think of the trees that reseed by dropping cones or seeds, whatever,
An area-based
runners.
thing.
I think of it as a system, an ecosystem is a grove, not just individual 5 trees. So I find the whole thing super confusing.
Let me ask a question of
support it,
staff on this, if I could.
because I want to preserve the trees. I think it's a beautiful street. I've been on that street many times. But I find the whole presentation to us and the code blurry.
Chairman? I want to ask a question of staff. Is this something we could put on code cleanup? Is this within our purview to kind of revisit what the definition of, I mean, the Heritage Grove thing, it went all the way through council. It was a laborious process, and it's still kind of vague. There is no Heritage Grove permit or Heritage Grove designation so we're calling this a Heritage Grove, but 5 years from now, it's just going to be 5 heritage trees. The grove concept will be lost. And I'm just wondering if this is something that we would need to go to council to revisit, or if this is something that we would revisit as the Planning Commission.
It would have to go to city council for reconsideration through
Okay.
the UFAC.
Well, Susan, maybe you and I together will go and present to council and see if we can get this back on the list to be looked at.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the project as outlined in the staff report.
Thank you, Steve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Motion passes with 4 commissioners voting yes and Commissioner Ryan absent. Before we move on, I want to say, Ms. Kessler, I am so impressed with you. I really, really am. I mean, big changes, real changes have happened to our city and our city code thanks to your hard work. I mean, I've been here for 6.5 years, and I don't remember exactly how many years ago it was where you showed up to every planning commission meeting, every city council meeting, and you made your point. And sometimes you have to shout, and sometimes you just have to talk, but sometimes you have to talk more than once. And you showed great persistence, and bravo, bravo.
Can I ask a point of order, I guess? I understood that if a consent item is pulled by a member of the public, it's heard immediately after the consent. And if it's pulled by
Same rules.
commissioners, it's heard at the end of the evening. Is there?
No, I think it's by the public or by us. It's heard directly after the consent calendar vote.
Okay.
And so who pulled item 6B? By the way, this item's closed. Thank you very much. And we're moving on to item 6B, which is the South Coast Highway 101 improvements. It was pulled by someone.
We do have one speaker, and that's Ellen Burr.
Okay, do we need a full staff report on this? That's what I'm.
Ellen, would you like to hear a staff report? Or speak to the item?
That's okay. Somebody else may pull it.
No one else from the public has pulled the item.
Okay, well, I consider this one pretty straightforward. An ADU sidewalks finally going to Solana Beach. I'm also looking forward to a way to get it back across the 101, but that's a different project, I'm pretty sure. I find this a no-brainer, belonged on the consent calendar, and I'd make a motion for approval.
I would second that. I don't know if the person who pulled it would want to
You wanna-
explain why they pulled it.
Do you want to talk more about it? Come on up, tell us. I mean, we're friendly people.
No, I wanted to speak. I didn't necessarily.
Oh, I thought you were like,
No,
we want to hear what you have to say. We really do.
absolutely. I know that it's, good evening, Commissioners, Chairman. I understand the desire to rubber stamp this, especially since you're going to be essentially getting a $800,000 project for 80. But my understanding is that this would then go, hopefully soon, to the Coastal Commission for approval. And before, I don't know, once it goes to the Coastal Commission, if there's any opportunity for any variation or changes at that point. So I have two specific questions about the south end, where it meets Solana Beach. One would be, before this goes, it would be nice to have something closer to and I'm very sorry Commissioner Ryan isn't here, as to a crossing at that point to Harbaugh. I hate for this to be approved and then all of a sudden we can't do the other thing because it doesn't jive well with what's already gone. And there's also this little goat path at Solana Beach that goes down into the parking lot that is used all the time by pedestrians, and I cannot believe any good Solana Beach people or guests are going to walk all the way down to the entrance to the park and double back to make it to the beach. So it seems to me that we need to have an access at that juncture for people to get down into the park. And especially if we eventually get something across the street to Harbaugh, people coming through there are really going to want to get to the restrooms, and they want to get there quick. So I hate for this to go and then us not be able to deal with things. And frankly, I think the Coastal Commission would not want to see the little goat path go away to the parking lot that provides access to the beach. My next question is, so by doing this, will we now have complete ADA sidewalk compliance from Chesterfield to Solana Beach, or not? And if we aren't going to have it, then why are we doing this, which seems to be more of a benefit to Solana Beach, other than that we can, as opposed to dealing with any gaps we still have between the entrance to the park there and, say, Chesterfield. So, thank you. That's all I had to say.
Would you like me to? Do you want me to clarify those points? Okay. So on the screen here, you can kind of see the south portion that she was referring to, tying in essentially just before actually Solana Beach. There's an existing sidewalk there. So basically ADA compliance, connection. The goat trail you're referring to is in this location, so we're just tying into it. We can't call it a trail or a path because then you need ADA access to that or through that. So it's just there essentially. As we come back towards the north end, the sidewalk ties into the existing driveway to South Cardiff State Beach. And so then the truncated domes are put in and get you across this way heading into the living shoreline, which has a 10% aggregate DG trail, which is ADA compliant all the way towards the chart house. So where we don't have ADA compliance is in theory in front of the chart house. That sidewalk portion was approved with the project that hasn't moved forward yet. And then the Pacific Coast Grill also has a segment that they're gonna build with that improvement that's going on right now. So that would be ADA compliant all the way up towards Chesterfield, as you indicated. So the goal is obviously, it's a patchwork, but those other pieces are private property, and as they develop, then they dedicate the sidewalk improvements. So in theory, we would have that entire stretch. I think as you referred to the crosswalk, that's kind of a separate discussion, but both cities have been discussing that as to where it might go, and obviously who's paying for that. But this application specifically is a grant-funded application, as you indicated, and it's a pretty good deal considering what we're getting here, so.
And just for clarification, there's nothing in this plan that would preclude that future crosswalk if and when it's going where it's going.
No, it'd be a separate review, separate application process.
I know when I first saw this, I was like, oh, the crosswalk. Oh, okay, no, not the crosswalk. But the crosswalk's essential. I remember first time we built this path going up here, I was like, I can't ride there with my bike, with my kid, because somehow or another we're gonna have to get home. And I didn't want to drive all the way into Solana Beach to turn around. But that's coming. I'd say you've answered my questions. I see, Bob, you've got something?
Just a quick question. So on the screen, on the plan that you have up on the screen, it stubs right before Solana Beach. Is it tying into an existing sidewalk that, I didn't walk this?
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
sidewalk you can see is lighter in color, but yeah, that's the existing sidewalk.
Okay.
And then this is the city boundary right here.
Yeah, I got to see the city boundary. I just wasn't sure if that lighted, that soft area actually was the existing side. So that stops, and then we're going to pick up from there.
Right, exactly, yep.
Thank you.
I still support the project. I think, like a lot of city projects, you've got to take what you can get when when it's offered, right? So I agree, a crosswalk is really important at this location, but I wouldn't hold up a good project in waiting for that. Let's get this built, and then we can tie in a crosswalk when that's appropriate. So I would make a motion to approve this item per the staff report.
All right, I'll second that motion. Oh, Commissioner Prendergast beat me to it. No? All right, the motion passes 4-0 with one commissioner absent. And let's see now. Does anyone need a break? No? No, we're all good? Moving on. Next up is item 8A on our regular agenda. We still have people in the audience, that's great. We only have one item on the regular agenda, and that is the Dukes Cardiff Office Expansion Planning Commission interpretation. This is case number interpretation 6015-2023. The Dukes Cardiff office is at 110 Aberdeen Drive in Cardiff, and this is a public hearing to consider a planning commission interpretation to determine whether a bar, cocktail lounge use can be determined as similar to a wine bar use. And we'll start off, are there any disclosures?
Yes, I drove by and poked my head in today.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, I know the area well. I didn't go there today, but we'll start with a staff report by Rachel Lindebreck.
Good evening. Sorry. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public. I am Rachel Lindebrecky with Development Services, and today I will be presenting on item 8B, the Dukes Cardiff Office Expansion Planning Commission interpretation. The project site outlined here in red is located off Aberdeen Drive and San Elijo Avenue. The site is located within the Cardiff by the Sea Specific Plan area, from now on referenced as CSP, and is zoned Cardiff General Commercial 1 or CGC 1. The project site is surrounded by commercial uses, including offices, restaurants, and retail to the north, south, and east, and there's a railroad corridor to the west. The project site was previously developed under the County of San Diego in 1959 with a one-story commercial center. Duke's Cardiff Office Bar was established under the County of San Diego's jurisdiction when the site was zoned to general commercial. In 1996, after incorporation, but prior to the CSP, The bar was permitted to expand into an adjacent suite through the approval of a major use permit into its current configuration. The site was zoned general commercial at that time of the addition, which permitted a bar and cocktail lounge through the use of a major use permit, or through permitting of a major use permit. In 2002, City Council directed staff to draft the CSP with the intent of future development, retaining the local identity and community character of Cardiff. During the review process of the CSP, the use matrix was updated based on input from the Cardiff by the Sea community and a 12-member review committee made up of planning commissioners, business owners, and citizens known as the Cardiff by the Sea Specific Plan Review Committee. As a result of the input received, wine bar was included in the use matrix with the intent of allowing a wine tasting room or similar type of operation, while bar and cocktail lounge was omitted to no longer encourage full bar establishments within the specific plan area. The CSP was adopted by City Council on July 21st, 2010, then modified and adopted by the California Coastal Commission January 23rd, 2013, and made effective on May 8th, 2013. Under CSP Section 325A, only those uses listed within the use matrix Table 3.1 shall be permitted in the zones identified. All other uses not listed in Table 3.1 are expressly prohibited, except, however, in the event a use is not specifically permitted within the zone, but is similar in character to a use which is listed, a determination of allowable use may be applied for. Permitted and conditionally permitted uses within the CGC1 zone include a wide variety of retail and commercial services, including both restaurants and wine bars. The bar cocktail lounge use, however, is not listed in Table 3.1. The applicant would like to expand the existing 57-year-old Duke's Cardiff office bar into the adjacent 790 square foot tenant suite and add approximately 208 square feet of outdoor seating. Since bar cocktail lounge use is not listed in Table 3.1, the site is subject to the nonconformity chapter of the Encinitas Municipal Code, which states that it is unlawful for any person to enlarge, extend, or expand in any manner to change a nonconforming use so as to increase its inconsistency with the zoning regulations of this chapter. Under current code, the nonconforming bar would not be permitted to expand into the adjacent tenant suite, as it would be considered an enlargement of the unpermitted use within the CGC1 zone, which further increases its inconsistency with the CSP and nonconformity regulations. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a Planning Commission interpretation in compliance with Section 325A to determine the bar cocktail lounge use as similar in character to the wine bar use found in CSP Table 3.1. The applicant's request is based on the following similar characteristics. Both types of establishments offer a social and relaxing environment where patrons can unwind and enjoy a drink. Both bars and wine bars often feature a curated selection of drinks that have been chosen for their quality and unique flavors. Both types of establishments often have knowledgeable staff who can make recommendations and offer advice on the best drinks to try based on the customer's preference. And both bars and wine bars are popular destinations for a night out with friends or romantic evening with a partner and are known for providing a relaxing and friendly social experience. If the Planning Commission was to determine the bar cocktail lounge use as similar in character to the wine bar use, the applicant would be required to obtain a use permit modification, which would be brought forward to the Planning Commission at a later date. Although bar, cocktail lounges, and wine bars can be social and relaxing spaces, provide drink options, have knowledgeable staff, and be popular destinations for night outs, they are distinctly dissimilar in two key characteristics. One, in the alcohol they serve, and two, the accessory uses that are customarily associated with bar and cocktail lounges. One, during the review process of the CSP, the use matrix was updated based on the input of the 12-member review committee. Wine bars was listed in the matrix with the intent of allowing for the wine tasting rooms or similar type operations, while bar cocktail lounge use was omitted by the committee as they did not want to encourage the full bar establishments within the specific plan area. The proposed expansion would serve a full bar offering distilled spirits in addition to beer and wine. This extended menu of alcohol is dissimilar to a wine bar, as full bars include distilled spirits with higher alcohol content, and wine bars do not sell spirits, making the two uses dissimilar in character. During review of the Lost Abbey Planning Commission interpretation approved in 2014, consideration was given to the types of accessory uses and the operational characteristics anticipated for the beer tasting room to ensure it would fall under the wine bar use classification. In order to be considered similar in character to a wine bar use, the beer tasting room proposed within the CSP was not permitted to be a full bar and could not include pool tables or amusement devices. Duke's Cardiff Office Bar will offer a full bar and provide accessory uses not typical of a wine bar use, such as pool tables, foosball tables, and a shuffleboard. These accessory uses are customarily associated with a bar cocktail lounge, but are not customarily associated with a wine bar use. These accessory uses further make the bar cocktail lounge use dissimilar in character to a wine bar use. Restaurants with alcohol sales are conditionally permitted within the CSP if the proposed addition meets the requirements of a Type 47 on-sale general eating place ABC license, and the alcohol sales do not exceed 50% of the gross quarterly food sales, then the applicant could propose the addition as a restaurant with alcohol sales and outdoor seating area through a use permit, design review permit, and coastal development permit. However, at this time, the bar does not propose to make or serve food and would therefore not meet the minimum requirements of the Type 47 license, and therefore the addition and outdoor seating cannot be considered a restaurant with alcohol sales use. The Planning Commission interpretation has been determined to not be subject to environmental review pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act Section 15060C3, as the activity is not a project as defined in Section 15378. In closing, staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt the draft resolution of approval, which sets forth that the findings that the bar cocktail lounge use is not similar in character to the wine bar use and is therefore prohibited in the CSP, and the existing legal non-conforming bar cocktail lounge cannot be expanded and or enlarged. This concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start off with a simple question. I know, oh, bless you, Duke's is an ABC, what, Type 42 license, is that correct?
No, it's a, if I can answer that, it's a.
Sorry.
It's a type 48.
I'll get to you in a minute. I'm going to ask the staff of questions. I want to,
It's a Type 48 license.
it's a Type 48, and a wine bar is, what kind of ABC license would they come under?
I apologize.
Oh, it's quite all right.
I don't have that up. It would be a beer and wine license.
They would probably be the,
I can look it up real quick. I apologize.
I see, everyone to my left is also scrambling to find that. Oh, yeah, I think they're 42, if I'm not mistaken. I was just wondering if there was a special designation for
There is not. It would be a wine and beer license. So it would
So,
just be for lower alcohol content.
Lost Abbey, would they,
There's different types of alcohol licensing. I don't know them by
I know, I
heart,
used to have a
but-
big chart. I couldn't find it before I came here.
But there are things where you can do tastings, and
Mm-hmm.
there's different categories and.
But it's different. It's not a type 48. Type 48 is unique. And again, just for the record, I think we have only 2 type 48s in Cardiff. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we have only 6 in the entire city of Encinitas. And I'm even not sure what happened with O'Hurley's closed and moved. I don't know whether they're able to take their license with them and set up elsewhere. But we may be down to just 5. That was it. That was my only question of clarification. Anyone else?
I have a question about the Cardiff Specific Plan Review Committee. It seems like a lot of point in the staff report is made to their kind of explicit desire not to have a bar cocktail lounge. Is that from reviewing written reports or the video of those meetings?
That information was pulled from determinations from Lost Abbey, which was a PC interpretation that was completed the year directly after the specific plan went into effect, and also reviewing of the specific plan, which identified the committee itself as being part of the development of the plan.
Thank you.
Susan?
So I have a question. So right now, this wine bar exists with a conditional use permit?
Are you speaking on Lost Abbey? I apologize. Or on Duke's?
On Duke's right now? It's a wine bar?
Duke's is a full bar, and they are currently approved under a use permit. That is correct. They were established under the general commercial zoning, which allowed for that use.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? We'll can come back to this. I think it's proper, we'll hear from the applicant next. And I'm not sure who's anyone representing the applicant. Is that you? Come on up. I've got a Daniel Steinmeier, but I don't believe that's you.
He's the architect.
Oh, okay. I'm going to open public comment. And 10 minutes on the clock, please.
Okay, hi. Thank you for having me. I've got to put my glasses on here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak for Duke's Cardiff office. My name is Darlene Gustafson, and my husband is Bob, and we've owned the Cardiff office for about 22 years now. We love the Cardiff community and are proud that we own an iconic dive bar that has been here since 1965. It is a fixture among locals and adds to the unique feeling of the Cardiff community. We have been in business for decades and serve the local community and visitors, keeping Cardiff the fun beach town that we all love. The COVID-19 pandemic threatened the future of the office. Through the support of our community, we were able to survive. Measures taken by the city, such as outdoor seating, were a lifeline to us. But the pandemic took a toll on our business, like so many others. We still have not fully recovered from the pandemic's effects. In order to survive and protect the office's future, we took over the lease of the neighboring suite. All we are asking for tonight is for the Planning Commission to allow us to expand and connect the neighboring unit within the general commercial area we are in. We want to expand for 3 reasons. 1, adding a permanent food element. 2, keep our outdoor seating. And 3, increase sustainability and accessibility. We realized that a food element in our establishment was necessary so that our bar could be open during the pandemic. We believe that it is in our customers' best interest to improve upon what we started by adding additional space to the Cardiff office. Traditionally, we have allowed our patrons to bring in food from other establishments. However, after 10 p.m., those options are limited. During COVID, we needed to have that food option in-house to our customers. Leasing the suite next door allowed us to do that. We want to expand so that we can keep the outdoor seating area that our patrons love and feel safe in. We added a roll-up window as well, so there would be plenty of airflow because of COVID. Our goal is to build out and operate our new space in the most sustainable way possible. We've looked at investing into solar options, and we've also, as a general rule, minimize our use of natural resources, conserve energy, minimize pollution, and place an emphasis on ingredients that are reused or recycled. We believe expanding will help us improve our equipment and take advantage of smart technology. We want our customers to feel safe and comfortable. We are adding the accessible bathroom, braille for the visually impaired, and a patio with the ocean view, which will help de-stress people in these crazy times. We also want to give our patrons the ability to come and have a beer while playing games such as ping pong, pool, or trivia night, so they can interact with their Cardiff friends. This additional safe space provides the extra room needed for those activities. We also have doormen who provide security. We want our city to be proud of us. We are asking you, to make an interpretation that will allow us to continue what we have been doing for years, but only in a better, more responsible way since COVID. Since COVID is here to stay by allowing the expansion of the next suite and the ability to connect the suites so patrons can move freely among them. Our request to the Planning Committee is simple, that a determination of allowable use for an expansion of the Duke's Cardiff office, a 57-year-old bar use business within the CSP. We would like to expand from our existing 1,760 square foot bar into the existing neighboring suite, 790 square feet, and to make permanent our patio seating along the parking lot like the adjacent Best Pizza and Brew. Also, a determination of allowable use may be requested for a use that is similar in character to a use that is listed. A wine bar is listed under Table 3-1 of the CSP. Overall, our establishment is similar in character to a wine bar because both offer a social environment, a curated selection of drinks, knowledgeable staff, a friendly atmosphere, and a focus on relaxation and enjoyment. General commercial was the parcel zoning designation for many decades. General commercial allows a bar use. This parcel currently has a general plan designation of general commercial, which legally allows a bar use, the CSP states. Request PC to determine that a determination of allowable use for an expansion of an existing 57-year-old bar within the CSP is acceptable as part of this use permit, not a general determination that bar use is appropriate within the CSP. This would have consequences for all properties within the C-GC-1, a wider issue that the PC should not consider. Thank you for your time. Actually, I was going to ask you if you had any questions, but I did want to address one of the things that you were stating up there as far as food goes. I did find out something today, and it was my mistake. I did not know this when we had our meeting, but we do have that license 48. And under that license, we are able to provide food for our customers. We're not required as with other licenses. So we would be happy to do that because, again, we don't know that COVID's over. I mean, even as we speak, even as I speak now, people are talking about masking up again. And I mean, the whole reason why we got the provisional use in 2020 was for COVID. The reason why we took over next door was so that we could put a roll-up window in and there would be some airflow and we could stay open. Otherwise, we would have been closed. We would have been closed the entire time. So when we did that, because we've never done anything like this before, we didn't realize that it was going to take 2 to 3 years. I mean, I feel like I have to be an attorney to read some of these things. So I hope you can understand what I've said, and if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. I'll try.
Thank you. I don't have anything for you right now, but I'm going to leave public comment open unless somebody else wants to jump in right now.
I have a question for you. You just said that general commercial allows for bar cocktail use. Are you citing the Cardiff-specific plan or the city's municipal code? Where is that permitted?
I think that when we originally opened, I believe that's
I
what
see.
we were. And the architect couldn't be here tonight, and so he
Sure.
would know better than I can ask him and get back to you on that.
Okay, understood.
I think the point was that it was allowable before the Cardiff-specific plan in '96. The CSP went through in 2002 after several years of work, which you probably know all too well, being our Cardiff rep.
Right, you probably know Tom. He just passed away, and I mean, he is the one that we first spoke with, and he was the one who actually drew up the original plans for us, and then unfortunately he passed. So,
We lost a couple. We lost Morgan Mallory as well. He was a good friend of mine.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's unfortunate, obviously. It's very sad.
Yeah.
So, all we're really asking for is, again, we've had the bar since 1965. It's been there, and it's not a very big space. I've already had, some plans drawn up where we could put a kitchen, so we could do food. If that would help. We're trying to work with you guys, and we would hope that you would try to work with us. Again, it's not a very big space.
I think we all know, we know the location super duper well. Why don't you have a seat for now?
All
I
right,
think
sounds good. Thank you.
we'll deliberate here, and like I said, I'm going to keep public comment open, and if we need to call you back, we will. I don't know, this is, I love our iconic old places, but a bar is not a wine bar. They're different in my world. And I don't really want to set up a precedent to try and help. I don't want to do the wrong thing to try and do the right thing. I mean, we have to follow the rules here. Personally, I think it was omitted intentionally. I mean, I remember that line in here, which is anything not on this list is expressly prohibited, was left in there intentionally. It wasn't left in there. It's not something in any of the other specific plans.
I do want to play devil's advocate a little bit to you, Kevin.
for it.
Omission doesn't mean it's explicitly denied. There are
It does.
uses in that table that have an X that says these uses are not permitted. So no one decided to add that use and then put an X in the column that says not permitted. So by excluding it,
Right. So
yeah, I
they
mean, some
left it in the
people are
gray area.
interpreting that to be some exclusion, but I think they have truly had meant to prohibit it, and I don't know the discussion, and that's why I asked if there was a recording or some personal or firsthand knowledge of what the discussion was, and it was just an oversight. But there are other uses in that table that are expressly prohibited because they put the X in that column.
Right. Well, I mean, this is an unusual line. All other uses not listed in Table 3.1 are expressly prohibited. It's, it was put in there intentionally. So I think it is there, whether it was put there intentionally or not, it is what's there.
So I would have to look at the list, but my recollection is that there's nothing in that list where everything across the board is X'd out. Rather, the X's are, in some areas it's allowed, and in the chart, then they put the X saying not in this zone, even though it's allowed in other zones. So that is to say, Commissioner Doyle is correct that the code is not express as far as this particular use. That's why it's before you. But I don't think that by itself is sufficient, and I think you would agree with that as well.
Right. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like,
just to follow up, Kevin, immediately after expressly prohibited is,
And this is-
except, however, if they
and
come to the
this-
planning
this is the
commission
point of
and make a
contention.
decision.
This is
Right.
where we'll have our discussion, is on that.
Yeah.
Is it similar or is it not?
Yeah, and I think the point's well taken that maybe a use that is allowed in some of the zones receive an X in those zones that are not permitted, but something that's prohibited in all zones is just not listed. I could
Yeah,
concede
I
that.
mean, there's probably a bunch of event, I didn't see pornography stores, I didn't see strip clubs. I mean, there's things that could have ended up with X's all the way across, but you'd end up with, 50 pages of things you didn't want.
If I
So,
may, Chair, I did want to add that our codes are permissive codes, and if it's not mentioned, it's not allowed. And that is how the city has operated.
okay, thank you, Anna. So,
So I have to add a little to this. So what had happened here is that when the land was county jurisdiction, the designation was bar, cocktail lounge through a major use permit, correct? So it's operating, and it has been operating since 1959? Is that correct? And so that time, then 1996, it was before the the specific plan, the Cardiff, before the Cardiff specific plan. They were permitted to expand at that time. And we're still permitted to be a bar, cocktail lounge through a major use permit, correct? In 1996?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. But now, because of the Cardiff specific plan, they're not allowed to expand further.
'cause
That's the whole
they're now legal non-conforming.
picture.
Yeah, that is correct. So they would be subject to the nonconformity regulations where they can repair and maintain their existing structure, but would not be allowed to enlarge the nonconformity.
But if you determine that this is essentially the same thing as a wine bars are allowed, so it would not be a legal nonconformity. So the question is this exactly the same thing as a wine bar, or is this something different?
But either way, the existing space will continue as a bar cocktail lounge?
Yeah, legal non-conforming, just like,
Regardless of what you decide here, they may continue to operate as a bar.
And so if they expand and they're offering food service, that's okay?
If they change to a restaurant, they could do that.
and if they change to a restaurant, our deemed approved ordinance is going to insist that they get only half of their income from alcohol and at least half from food. That's, I know, I've read your, but, I mean, if they were to be a type, was it type 47 restaurant, then all the restaurants that also serve alcohol can only go up to 50%. Well, come on up then. That's all right. We want to hear,
What I found out today, and again, this is what I didn't know when I had your meeting, we have a license 48, which is just to sell
which is,
alcohol.
yeah,
Right.
it's a bar.
But when I talked to the ABC today, they told me that what that actually means is I can sell food and alcohol, but I'm not required to sell food. So with my 48 license, I don't have to change my license. I can use that space that I'm trying to expand in
and that's
and sell
not in
food. I don't
dispute.
have to, well, I heard you talk about different licensing, so
Well-
I wanted to make sure you understand that I
So-
wouldn't have to change my license.
I think maybe the clarification is that the state is not requiring that you have food, but the city is requiring that if you're going to be a restaurant, that there be food. Or, so the city, so there's two sets of regulations. There are the state regulations, which you're in compliance with, and then the question is, are you in compliance with the city requirements?
I guess I'm hung up on the terminology with restaurant. I mean, if I'm going to be serving food, I can still have my 48 license. I don't have to change that. I don't have to do the 50%, is what ABC told me.
That's very correct. And walk a couple of, like 1 foot over, so you're kind of aiming more at the, there we go.
Sorry.
That's okay. So as a restaurant, I mean, we have a lot of restaurants people think of as bars. They're not. It's like I'll go down the line, Death by Tequila is a restaurant. It's a type 47. They can serve pretty much everything you can serve, but as a restaurant, they are required to sell no more than half of their income can come from alcohol. And
Right.
that's what a restaurant is.
Right.
Now, the issue here is that as a type 48, which is a bar/cocktail lounge, according to the code and the specific plan, it's not allowed, which means you can't, and which makes it legal non-conforming, so it's not allowed to get bigger. So staff floated out an idea of, well, if they did want to get bigger, they could try and I mean, I'm not recommending this, but we've had the tasting room at Modern Times, which we approved 6.5 years ago almost. Before that one came to council, it was appealed. They basically pulled their application and became a restaurant. So they're not a tasting room, they're a restaurant that serves, actually a lot of vegan options, and they get, most of their money from the food. So we're not saying you should be anything other than you are, but if you're gonna stay what you are, then the code really doesn't allow you to get bigger. Now, not saying that there's no way forward, but here, if we have to make a decision, it's like, is a type 48 bar cocktail lounge the same as a wine bar? I mean, my common sense is, well, no, they're different. I mean, it's wine bars, generally, as you point out, stay open only till 10, if then. They're generally selling a kind of a cohesive, it's like Lost Abbey sells Lost Abbey beer. Duckfoot Tasting Room sells Duckfoot beer. They don't sell
Right.
anything and everything. It's, so I'm not saying that I'm not I appreciate your concerns, and I know I've worked with a lot of businesses locally to get through this COVID nightmare, but, we have to do the right thing, and we do the right thing by the code. That's kind of our job up here.
Well, I
So-
understand that, and I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate your concern. I'm just asking for maybe a different interpretation based on, we picked the wine bar because in a lot of ways it is similar because you are going there to relax. The original office, the Duke's Cardiff office, is a cocktail lounge bar. I mean, that's already been established. That's there. That's not going anywhere. And so when we leased the place next door, again, it was to help us through COVID. And so now we were just asking you to maybe interpret it, just look a little differently at
The
it.
problem with interpretations is they don't just work for one situation. They go in the books, and they become basically the law of the land up until another interpretation is made, which is usually a big deal. So we hesitate to make interpretations that aren't really accurate, because 5, 10, 20 years from now, we won't be here, but someone else will, and our interpretation could lead to disastrous effects. So the interpretations have to be proper to the rule of law, and the specific plans take precedence over the general code. So once a specific plan is created, I mean, we have to follow that very closely. And I don't know, I would hesitate to bend that rule. I mean, if I thought they were the same, I might agree. I mean, the points you bring up, the similarities are there, but the dissimilarities are also kind of glaring to my eyes.
Well, but, I mean, I understand what you're saying about that if I hadn't already been there. I mean, if I were just going to come up and say, I wanted to start this, wine bar and have you look at it in comparison to what they propose with the CSP, then I understand that. But I've already been there since 1965. You need to also understand, it's 790 square feet. I mean, it's very small. It really is. It's very small. There's not a whole lot that can be done, with that place because it's so small. So what you were talking about before, the reason why I was wanted to interject is because it seems to me that you're saying if we decided that we could put a restaurant in there, then you might allow that. Am I getting that right?
There are two different issues. I don't think anybody here is questioning your right to serve food under your current license, but that's a state issue. What the city is saying is if you're going to sell, if you're going to be distilled spirits, half of your revenue needs to come from a restaurant, right? So you would have to go change your use under the city code to be a restaurant. Your license might be the same as it is from the state, or your current license may permit that, but right now your permit, or whatever, major use permit from the city doesn't allow you to sell food, I guess, right?
Well, no, I think
She could.
there's nothing keeping her from selling food. It's,
But I think
If
we're
she
getting
was-
off track here. The only, we're not here to approve the outdoor seating or the interior improvements. All we're being asked to do is a bar similar to a wine bar? And irregardless of your current license, your non-conforming legal use, you can continue on, but it's clear that you cannot expand your use without reclassifying yourself in some way.
I agree, that is the crux of it. Expansion would be illegal under our current code, the specific plan, Cardiff-specific plan. It's unfortunate, and when laws change, I wasn't here when the specific plan was created. Maybe some of the other people weren't. But we have to follow it now. And so you do have what you have. You can't have that taken away from you.
And there
Well-
may be other ways forward, but this way is not that way. That's my opinion. This
The-
is not.
The only thing that I would say that I just want to make sure you guys understand is that if we were to try, and I know you're just doing this like in comparison of a wine bar and my cocktail bar, but if we were to try to go the other route and do the restaurant, which, thank you for clarifying, because I just didn't understand the difference between the city and the state, that would entail that we would have to do 50% food. And honestly, that's why I keep on bringing back that 790 square feet.
Yeah,
It would be
yeah.
impossible for us to do 50% food.
Yeah.
And
You-
50%
You're in a
off.
rock and a hard place. We're not arguing that, but I
Right,
think.
I mean, but I didn't know if you understood that. I mean, that's why we were asking to see if you could interpret it like, that we were similar to a wine bar. So,
I think we need
I
to ask.
think I
what is a wine
speak
bar?
for all of us.
I'd like to say something.
I think that we are sympathetic, but we have to follow the city specific plan, which is the more restrictive, unfortunately for you. But it doesn't prohibit you from doing what you already have. You do have an existing non-conforming legal use.
Can I ask a question? No, let's give us a few minutes to talk about this. Oh, yeah, I'm going to have to close public comment here because we got to dive into the weeds here. What is a wine bar? Anyone any idea?
Well, I think I have my own interpretation of a wine bar, and I would think of something like Caruth's in Solana Beach, or Meritage off of Rancho Santa Fe, where you buy wine and you can taste wine. There's no food. Sometimes there's a deli case with charcuterie, and you can have some cheese and crackers. You can purchase that. So that's my interpretation of a wine bar. There's nothing to stop the applicant from leaving the current demising and establishing a wine bar under the interpretation of the CARTA-specific plan and the Planning Commission. She could establish a wine bar in the lease space, no food required under the, unless there is food required. I'm not quite sure if there's a wine bar, but whatever the codes are for a wine bar, she could do that in the established space that she has leased. So there's a path forward to create a wine bar. Is that correct?
In my mind, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think I see several paths forward. It's not our job to figure them out for you now.
No, I
but-
don't think it's our job to figure it out for the applicant. However, as people who are interpreting the code, it's always helpful to the applicant to have a path. And one path was you could become a restaurant. Clearly, there's a legal process associated with that, and come back and apply as a restaurant. And you think you've already commented that it would be a restaurant. One of the variables is a 50-50 ratio of food to alcohol sales. But that's currently, that's a path that could be applied for, right?
It's a tough one. It was mentioned in the staff report. I
Yes.
wouldn't have thought of it for the space. It's too small. I agree.
I don't know their math, but that's certainly an option. And another option is to leave the existing demising wall and create a wine bar and continue forward on that path. Is that possible?
In my mind, they could serve all their beer and alcohol on one
side,
and
create
their
a-
cocktails on the other.
And expand their business and be conforming.
They have to divide their seating or something.
Yes. However, the staff requirements would be.
I don't want to start designing it.
No, I don't want to design anything
and-
either. I'm
and
just saying.
Speaking off the cuff, really.
No, I'm speaking off the cuff also, just trying to provide. But I tend to agree with everybody else in that there's a difference between a wine bar and a cocktail lounge. And the applicant had said many times, they have a cocktail lounge. They have a cocktail bar. So I just wanted to.
I have a difficulty with it, too. I think the Cardiff-specific plan is flawed in many ways. It's ironic that a community business that has been here for so long, and the Cardiff-specific plan was in some ways intending to try to protect all of these beloved businesses, and yet it's written in a way that prevents them from expanding or enhancing their business. But at the core of it, to me, they are different. A wine bar, and I kind of realize that they're just different alcohol licenses too. The state defines them in a different way, and so as much as I kind of argue in my mind, well, tastes and beverages change over time, and why are we to say that wine is somehow a sophisticated, great drink for our community, but beer is not, or we can accept beer now, but certainly we can't accept, alcohol or bourbon.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of really cool speakeasies. But that's not the point. I think Susan made a good point. The specific plan is the specific plan. I don't see wine bars as the same as cocktail bars.
Yeah, that's why I said, I do imagine there's ways forward here. It's just twisting our interpretations to make the thing we want to have happen is not the way to do it. Now, there's a question, Anna, you might be able to help on this.
We have the staff recommendation.
Yeah, let me ask a question first. Now, would there be a way from either the planning commission or council to provide a variance to say, wow, this business has been here for 75 years and we want to allow them to override
We
this?
wouldn't want to prejudge that.
No, I wouldn't want to.
I'm more than happy and actually plan on speaking with the applicant afterwards. There are any number of different ways to maybe not do exactly what you're wanting, but there are similar options, and I'd be happy to talk to you about some ideas.
Thank you very much for that, Scott, because that's one of my concerns. You were already leasing that space right next door to you, right? Yeah. So it's yours. You got to make it work one way or the other. And why we're not here to go to you with a bar, we want to make sure, we have to follow the rules. And the rules, I'm always aware that they, other people will try and figure out what we meant 10 years from now. And I don't want to twist our interpretations. They're one of the most powerful tools we have. Thank you so much, Scott, because I do feel that there are ways forward, but as I said, I say this one is not it. And based on that, I think I'd have to make a motion to accept staff's recommendation. Oh, wait, Bob, you had something to say? We can still talk about it after the motion's out there.
Real quick, the shanty has outdoor seating, and there's other establishments in Cardiff that have outdoor seating. Is there anything that's occurred that doesn't allow them to continue to have there was a reference to having outdoor seating if they were to expand, to protect their outdoor seating. Is there something that they lost for their outdoor seating? Or can they still?
My little boy's bedtime.
Currently, through COVID, temporary use permits allow for outdoor seating under Assembly Bill 61. I hope I stated that correctly. And so a lot of venues have outdoor seating through that process, which is temporary, and it'll expire when the state laws expire.
Okay.
And I do want to be clear, a wine bar requires a use permit under the specific plan. A restaurant with alcohol requires a use permit under the specific plan. So either of those options would require a use permit modification to become whatever those uses are, a portion of the entire thing, whatever it may be, that would be required to be processed with staff and then brought forward to Planning Commission.
If they, so this is just a macro question, if they come back and apply for that use permit, does that open up everything from historical? Does it change the major use permit, so the conditions, if that's the right word? If they have 1, 2, 3, and 4, but maybe their laws have changed, and if you come back and apply for something new, or is there an exposure to all the new codes, say, an ADA bathroom or something?
They would need to comply with current codes.
Current code. So when you change the major use, you open yourself, an applicant would open themselves up to current code regulations.
As a general rule, yes, there are a few exceptions, but yes.
And probably more importantly, they would lose their non-conforming status if they, I don't know. I'm going into.
No, I'm bringing these up because it's a weave.
There's the land use, you would lose your land use rights, and then depending on the building itself, some of that might still be allowed.
Right, thank you.
I'd like to second the motion that you made, Kevin.
Thank you, Steve.
Susan, excuse me, Susan. Oh, okay, got it.
Okay, well, the motion passes 4 to nothing with one commissioner absent, which means the interpretation is that the two are not similar. And that's it for this item. And Scott, thank you for your help. And he's really smart. We're gonna figure something out. But I'm gonna still try and do things the right way. So, moving on. Do we have any future items added by the planning commissioners? No. Experience group says no. Planning commission reports. I'm going to make a quick report. I'm going to be, I'm flying out a week from today to spend some time with my mom, who's 90 and now she's on oxygen, and she's really kind of difficult. And it's my turn to go and be with my beautiful and loving and somewhat difficult mom. So I will be missing the September 21st meeting. And Steve, I'm telling you this mainly because you got surprised once before, and hopefully it's not one of the monster housing element sites. Or maybe no, I want to be there for all of them. Does anyone else have anything to add? Susan?
I attended last week the Zone 2 and 3 safety meetings
Okay.
conducted by the city. And at each of those meetings, there were, I think, 20 different ideas shown at the Zone 2 and about a dozen shown at Zone 3. And so we were all given a presentation, and then we were given a question form asking which of those solutions would increase safety. And they were all pretty much to do with bike and pedestrian safety. And so my input was that the number one thing to increase safety is to reduce vehicles, motor vehicles, because not everyone is going to ride a bike. We have an increasingly older population across the United States, and specifically in Encinitas as well. And not everybody can ride a bike when it's raining or cold or excessive heat. They're going to be driving. They're going to be in some sort of vehicle. So I think that my input and some other people, I understand at Zone 1, they said shuttles are proposed and, ride call apps or things that take cars off the road, school buses
Yep.
for children, because we don't have school buses in our district. And one of the big bottlenecks is when people are dropping off and picking up their kids, they're using cars or vans, trucks, whatever. So I think that they're still accepting public comment on those topics. And I would encourage people, if they're interested in safety, they may want to submit their own comments. But for my part, I attended the entire meeting for Zone 2 and most of Zone 3. I think I left after they kind of wrapped up the feedback part of it. So I'm not sure if the other people here didn't want to attend or just didn't know about it or whatever, but I attended. Oh, and there were, by the way, several council members that did attend. So that was good to see.
Thank you. Yeah, I got short notice on that one. I felt like one of them I was finding like a day or two beforehand, and it seemed really important. I just couldn't. But it's good to know that there's online. Do we know what's the? I'm going to look this up just to see if there is an opportunity for feedback yet.
Yes, at the last hearing, I did state the contact Matthew Edgeworth.
Oh, okay.
There is a web page for his contact as well.
I'll look it up. I've got it from my notes from last week. No one else? We'll move on to number 11, Anna Kalamusi, Secretary's report.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Hope everything goes well.
Gonna live forever, honestly.
On that note, there are no items for September 21st, and it was going to be canceled. So I did want to announce that.
Okay.
And the
In
VM.
that case, I was totally planning to be there.
The VMT guidelines are going to be heard at City Council on September 27th. And then the Moonlight Apartments Housing Element Project appeal will be heard on September 13th at City Council. And that's all I have.
I have a question, if I could, and whether it's appropriate or not. Through public comment, we've been told about this impending project on Melba since the day I joined the commission, so that's 2.5 years ago. Tonight, it comes up. Obviously, there's a lot of wrangling going on. When will that project actually, somewhere in that staff report, it acted as if that project had already been submitted and actually a while ago. Will it be coming to us in the near future?
We do not have a timeline of when it will be coming before Planning Commission. It's still in review.
Thanks.
I also saw something, I think Coast News had an article. Is it called Quail Meadows? I always get confused. The larger project, the one that had an ESHA issue with environmentally sensitive habitat. So I missed that one as well, but it's, any idea when we might see that one? Because that one's turned into a big one, or stayed a big one, just on a smaller footprint.
Right, it's still in review.
Okay.
The revisions to the project are still in review. I would imagine coming shortly, but I don't have an exact tentative date to give you.
Cool. Well, we'll keep our eyes open.
Real quick, on those documents that are in review, aren't those available for review, like even draft EIRs available to the public if they went to the documents component of the city website?
Yes, this one in particular does not have an EIR. It is a by right project.
Right.
But environmental EIRs are available online under the public notices section.
Okay.
Yes.
So for all these projects that are submitted, there's an ongoing process that public can get caught up on early by going to those documents and reviewing those on the public, what is it, Development Services website page?
That's correct. It's through the customer self-service. The documentation is available. Those that are allowed to be public, yes.
Right. Thank you.
Anything else? I'm going to close this meeting at 8:10. And ordinarily, I would have said, we'll see you again September 21st, but I guess it'll be October or something. I don't have that date handy. But thank you, everyone.